of the movie.
Well, how about Frankenstein? Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I mean, the remakes afterwards, when they went into color and stuff, it didn't have the impact. Now, have you ever seen a good photograph, of a ghost town or scenery in black and white and the same picture in color? Your eyes go back to the black and white because the detail, the contrast, and your mind just goes, wow, You look at the color picture and you go, oh, that's nice, but it doesn't have the impact.
Right. Another show that was a show was a soap opera, Dark Shadows. It went from the 60s to the 70s. It went from black and white to color, and it kind of too. Remember that old soap? I love that old soap.
I used to cut school a lot to go home and watch that, yes.
I used to sneak and watch it. My mom would say, quit watching that. You're going to have nightmares.
Oh, you were sneaking home from school, too?
No, I wouldn't even. Well, let's see. I was like 5.
Then you're young. Then you're not old yet. He's younger than us. He just gave himself away.
Pretty soon.
Oh,
there you go. Good for you.
I'm catching up. Yeah, I'm catching up with you. But yeah, my mom would say, "You're gonna catch nightmares watching that show. Get out of there."
Well, you know what this reminds me of, you guys, is when the black and white versus the coloration of these films and these classic. Alfred Hitchcock, for instance, those kinds of things. It almost reminds me of the days of radio, before television was even around. And the theater of your own mind was much more vivid than anything you could have put on a screen, whether it was a movie or a television show.
War of the Worlds alone, that sums that up.
There you go.
Look what that did.
Oh, I have a wonderful story about War of the Worlds that bring it home to the state of Washington you might be interested in.
Oh, go ahead. Last time I talked about it, you know how many people sent me texts, hated me after I started telling people what actually transpired from that radio broadcast on CBS? Go ahead.
Is that right? Well,
I don't mind. It gives me something to read. I get bored in my life. I like reading texts.
Yeah, good one.
Well, this is a little bit of a controversy, but it's a true story. Back in 1930, Orson Welles was, believe it or not, 24 years old when he directed the Mercury Players in weekly productions of novels. He would do Wuthering Heights. He would do Shakespeare. And every week they'd have a new radio show, a drama, based upon a classic piece of literature. And, of course, at one point he decides to do the War of the Worlds, which was quite a large thing to bite off at that point in trying to make it a little bit more realistic. And people don't realize back then that John Houseman, the famous actor, director, producer, was the producer on the War of the Worlds with Orson Welles. They were both young men, and John Houseman was a great writer. So every time they would come up with a new show, they would throw it to one of their writers to put down on paper so that their cast, the Mercury Players, could rehearse it during the week and then produce it on the weekend. And this show for the War of the Worlds was produced on a Sunday night. But here was the kicker. It was not the Mercury Theater on the air was not the most popular show at the time. It was Charlie McCarthy.
Oh, yeah.
The puppet. And Edgar Bergen was, of course, the ventriloquist. And that was ruling the roost on all three of the major networks. Everyone would get their Sunday meals done. And at about 8 o'clock in the evening, everyone would sit down in their living room and they would listen to the radio. So at 8 o'clock, the normal shows start, and Charlie McCarthy has got all of the audience. But Orson Welles was smart enough to craft his script for that evening show of War of the Worlds so that he gave the disclaimer that this was not a real story. This was, of course, a rendition of the famous novel by H.G. Wells. And we're going to start off with our radio play in just a moment. So no one heard that because they were all listening to Charlie McCarthy.
Yeah.
And what he did is he crafted the script to be totally up and running and really hot and heavy at the first break in the commercials that Charlie McCarthy's show had. So about 15 minutes into the show, they typically have a musical break, throwing it to some orchestra live at some hotel, and then they do a little Lux soap commercial and those kinds of things. But when that happens, he was smart enough, Orson Welles, to realize that people surf the channels at that point, and they want to find out what else is going on the other channels. And he was right in the middle of the landing from Mars of aliens coming to New Jersey at the time. And that's when people just went nuts because they did not hear the disclaimer up front.
Now, I got to ask you, I got to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, as an attorney, okay? Now, his show, as you know, there is documented where a farmer killed his wife and family because he was scared what was going to happen with him from the invasion. Now, if somebody put a show on like that now, and people started killing themselves or whatever happened, or they started looting or doing something strange, what would happen to the person who put the show on?
Well, somebody would be offended somewhere.
Well, would somebody...
There'd be lawsuits all over the place. There'd be class actions. All the plaintiffs' counsel around the country would be jumping on board and grabbing up as many clients as they possibly could. That's what would happen nowadays. But
how about jail? Would they put somebody in jail over it because people killed themselves because of the show, broadcasting, letting people who caught on, didn't catch the beginning of it and thought it was real because it was off of CBS radio. So, they thought maybe it was the news. And, you have to understand, people weren't as educated, in the 30s as they are definitely now, at least most. So in this case, like I was reading about the farmer who killed his wife and kids and stuff because he didn't want them, killed by, what was going to happen. That he thought the world was coming to an end.
I got to tell you something. My argument on that is people still know right from wrong. And the thing is, if that's what triggered it, if that didn't happen, there may be something else down the road that would have triggered him to do that too, because that's just the way I feel about it, because you still know right from wrong. And that's just, I couldn't blame the show on that. I just couldn't blame it.
Okay.
Yeah, it might have got him thinking about that, but if that show didn't happen, something else may have triggered him to do it if he's at that point.
Well, James, I got a question to you, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say Planet X is real. And let's say the government came out and they kept it quiet from the American public, the world, okay? They knew it was going to hit 2 years ago. They knew it was going to hit September 15th. So September 12th, they basically get on the news and say, we discovered that there is a planet. It is going to come near Earth, and we don't know what's going to happen. Most likely, you basically want to tell your friends and your loved ones that you love them and get ready for the end. What would happen? Right. What would the society do, knowing they only had maybe a day or two to live? How much looting would be out there? Murders and all this stuff because people wouldn't care.
Anarchy. That's why if there's ever what they call a stage Ellie going to happen with a meteorite or something like that, they keep it on hush hush, and because of panic, anarchy, and yeah, that's what happened. I agree.
Well, Michael,
especially in this day and age, with the mentality of the people compared to what it used to be, yeah, totally.
Well, what's your feeling on that, Michael?
Well, I have a perfect example of that, Gary. As you might know, or some people probably don't know, this War of the Worlds broadcast was actually kind of helped along as far as the panic that it created because of a small little town in Washington State called Concrete, Washington. When they were listening to the broadcast that night, coincidentally, the entire town, little town of Concrete, suffered a power outage and all the lights went out. And everyone, of course, thought that this was
stop,
alien invasion.
Okay, stop for a minute. Stop. Okay. Yeah. Ooh, go ahead.
Thank you. and what happened was that, periodically this will happen even nowadays where your power goes out, your lights go off, but your telephones still work, right? So they immediately in this small town got on the phone and called all of their relatives, wishing them, best of luck, we love you, but this is it, kind of thing. And of course, what happened is it got picked up by the UPI and the AP news services immediately and flashed across the entire country during the broadcast. And it started the whole panic, or at least reinforced the panic that was going on across the country. That's our little town of Concrete, Washington, and how it was involved in the major nationwide scare of the War of the Worlds.
One of the main dominoes that fell. It started it all.
Yes.
Or it sure helped.
Wow.
And I remember when Orson Welles was just inundated by the press the next day, about how could he have done this? Why did he think that people would not panic and all that stuff? And
well, he put a disclaimer out.
And that's kind of what he mentioned, of course. And of course, he was very humble and said he had no idea that this would cause such a stir. We've been doing these novels for, 3 seasons already now, and we have wonderful response on most of them. And then, of course, this one caught us by surprise. So it was amazing that he did not get prosecuted at all for that kind of, broadcast.
But would he have today, if he broadcast something like that today, okay, would he be prosecuted? Could he go to jail for it? If people kill themselves or mass panicking and people died from panicking, by whatever, getting, in their cars, trying to get out of the cities and accidents and all that stuff?
Definitely being cited for inciting a riot, probably, at least.
Well, yeah, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, probably criminal, prosecution. It would be a heck of a trial, that's for sure.
I can see it going to some higher court somewhere down the road. I'm sure.
The whole idea of free speech against, the reality of potentially causing harm.
Of who dictates when that free speech runs out and comes into something else.
Yeah, exactly, James.
And then who gets to dictate who does that? This could go on for like the mirror effect. I mean,
there you go.
Stop? Where does it stop and where does it begin?
I like that. That's a good analogy.
I do think people would probably panic more now than they did in the 30s. Because people are really, I hate to say it, they mistrust the government so much now, more than they did in the 30s and 40s. I mean, let's face it, people were so much into, America in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
It was loose lips sink ships, so everybody was behind the government. But that slowly has faded away since the 50s. That's done a flip flop.
Yeah, for sure. It's a matter of fact. You know what? When you stop to think about it, I have a feeling that might be one of the major motivation why the government is not coming out with full disclosure regarding the alien issue and life on other planets. They are slowly but steadily red-pilling the public on a slow, soft disclosure, they call it. But I have a feeling that they know, with this Brookings study that was done, back in the 60s, that indeed the public might think that they're ready for something like that, but they might not be at all. Plus, we don't know what the real truth is at this point. Maybe the truth is so shocking, so egregious, that we would even have a hard time handling it.
Yeah. There's a lot of variables there. Like, religions would fall and people would panic, and there's a whole plethora of things that could happen there. Exactly. I agree.
Well, hey, now, Michael, I don't know if you heard my little talk the other night about, the scientists came up with this idea how to regenerate Mars. Did you hear that one?